Sravana. Thank you so much for being here. This is our weekly program for our devotee community. And we are so excited to have a very special guest today speaking. Rasanath is a very beloved member of our community. And personally, I can share, talking to him and his classes, changed my life. I was in a community group with him and his wife. And he's just so steeped in Shastra and realization of applying that Shastra that he's able to really give amazing counsel and guidance to people. And him and his wife, Vrindavan Manoni, have done that for countless members of our community. I've even heard Rasanath Swami say that they have given so much shelter to so many members of our community. I heard that from Rasanath Swami. And he met devotees in 1997 in Chowpatty. And then he actually has a very interesting career background. He started his career in strategy consulting in 2000 and then worked as an investment banker for Bank of America on Wall Street from 2006 to 2008. And then he spent 4 years living as a brahmachari, a monk here at Bhakti Center, where at that time there was 20 brahmacharis or something. There was a whole really thriving brahmachari ashram. Doyal was also there, Doyal Gauranga, and many other members of our community. And yeah, they just went very deep together. And during that time with his best friend, Hari Prasad, I always do the Hari Parsad, Hari Prasad, I always mess those two up. Hari Prasad, they founded this amazing company called Upbuild, which is a leadership development company focused on building cultures of trust in organizations. And since that time, they've been doing this, and they've actually been coaching many individuals and also many companies, from hedge funds to tech startups. And he's been profiled in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, CNN, and PBS, and has a bachelor's in engineering from the Indian Institute of Technology and an MBA from Cornell. So he has so many achievements, but also it's so beautiful through this Upbuild community. They're bringing so many people to Krishna consciousness. They recently did a program with Satyananda Swami, and it was just so beautiful to see so many members of their community taking to Bhakti. So thank you so much. Please come and speak to all of us. Please give him a big
here for the first time? So you all know the lay of the land here. Thank you. So we'll begin with a few prayers. So we can create a space of entering into Krishna consciousness. I think we all come from, life has a certain inertia, and when we come into a sacred space like the Bhakti Center, the temple room, we still bring that inertia with us naturally. So through the prayers offer a certain corridor to entering into a different plane of experience. So we will recite a few prayers and then we can enter into today's discussion. Om Ajnanatirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Dharamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yudapadakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sasivam Savaitam Sahutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Radhan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanamscha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswate Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyari Paschatya Desharine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Welcome to Bhagavad Sravana today. And, the topic that I was asked to speak on, which I feel extremely unqualified, and yet it's a very important topic that has been spoken about so many different times. So many, there's so much depth to this topic. And we will just attempt to maybe look at one dimension, perhaps scratch the surface, which in general, that's what Krishna consciousness is. Every time we come together, there is just unlimited things to scope and understand. The topic today is devotee care from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And the reason why I personally feel unqualified to speak on this topic is I have made several mistakes over my life. I haven't really extended the kind of care that Krishna would have wanted me to extend. My understanding is limited because it's still limited by my own egoic tendencies. And so I definitely don't feel qualified to share a lot on this topic, but I'm going to make the attempt, mostly coming from my own mistakes. because there is enough rich material that you can, when you really study our own lives and truly learn from our mistakes, there is a lot of material that comes from it. So I'm just going to share from that. The second thing is, this topic is very vast, and I know both from experience of my own, being with my own spiritual master, His Holiness Rasanath Swami, and many, many other Vaishnavas, they understand this topic way more than I will ever be able to articulate. As Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, that what I'm sharing in the Chaitanya Charitamrita is a drop in the ocean. And I truly feel in the presence of individuals, devotees who have, over the parampara that we come from is that entire tradition where care has been exemplified by the lives of these Vaishnavas. That it's a tall order to really live up to that. And we are truly standing on the shoulders of giants. So I feel very unqualified to even sit here and delve into this topic. But we are going to do it, and hopefully it comes from a place of inspiration to really implement this in our own lives in whatever way we can. So devotee care, two words, devotee and care. So why is this so significant? Why is this so important? So we can begin with understanding care first, because it's a very broad terrain. So if I were to ask you, what is the most essential thing for care? What would you say?
Love.
Love, self-love. Okay. Good.
Empathy.
What's that?
Empathy.
Empathy? Okay. Good. Yes? What's that? Being attentive.
I was going to say the same thing, paying attention.
Paying attention. Good. Paying attention. Very true. Anything else? Love is the most essential ingredient for care. Attention is the expression of love. When we have love, we naturally care. And so it is very hard to speak about care without understanding love. We can, when we don't truly have love in our hearts, or when that love is limited, we can intellectualize our way into care. We can maybe sometimes. But it's hard to actually care. So care implies love. We cannot do it without that. It's actually that simple. Which is why when we talk about devotee care, sometimes, and we will see from the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is a spectrum. Care is simple and care is complex. But in both, so the simplicity of it and the complexity of it, the one thing that is absolutely essential is love. Which means our hearts have to really feel love for another person. So the reason why I chose care first is, in this material world, everybody requires it. Every single person, every living entity requires it. And the biggest starvation, as Mother Teresa would put it, and as Rasanath Swami loves to quote Mother Teresa, is And it's not the lack of food, it's not the lack of water, it's not the lack of shelter. It is the lack of love. In the material world, we acutely feel it. And that is the biggest poverty. And you know what's amazing about this love is that people who have everything in their lives, materially speaking, are also starved. Because you can maybe get some semblance of love through material things. But it's never the real thing. And it's usually when you get there, it's disappointing. Because it never feels, because that is the nature of the soul. The soul, by nature, wants to experience. This is so fundamental, right? It's so, again, the reason why I'm emphasizing this, we have all heard this numerous times, but there is something very basic to care. Is that it's the nature of the soul is to love and to be loved. And every living entity in this material world is ultimately wanting that, and is in the material world there is an acute poverty around it, especially in this age of Kali Yuga. You will see very distinctly. There is such the supply-demand ratio is very, very heavily skewed. There is a great demand for it, but even with the demand, people are substituting love with a lot of things, and the supply is very limited. And not that the supply is limited, because ultimately love ultimately comes from the source of all love, which is Radha and Krishna. But when that connection has been tampered with very badly, then naturally there is a supply issue. Because the living entity is not the source of love. Right? The living entity can only become the conduit of Krishna's love. And in the process of becoming the conduit of Krishna's love, and also experience it. But when that supply is turned off, when our faces are turned away from Krishna, then two things happen. One is somehow we inherit the burden of becoming the source of love, which is impossible. Right? And that is also, interestingly, a trap of the false ego, to become the source of love. And the second thing is that we don't experience it ourselves, so then it's impossible to give it. So it is very basic. It requires love. Everybody needs this. Every living entity. And this is where we then introduce the other word, devotee. So why is devotee care so important? How do we understand the word devotee? Any thoughts? Yes.
Well, Lord Chaitanya defined it in 3 different ways.
That's right.
When he was asked 3 different times. First one was anyone who once chants the holy name.
Okay.
Second one was anyone who constantly chants the holy name. And third one was someone who induces others to chant the holy name.
Good. Okay. From perspective of the holy name, yeah, those are the three ways in which we can define devotee. Thank you. Anything else? Devotee.
But someone who accepts Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead and wants to serve him.
Okay. Then we can go even broader, right? Like what's
someone who accepts God.
Yeah, God. Right? When someone who accepts God is a devotee, right? Acknowledges the existence of God. It's a devotee. Yes.
Based on what you just said, I would say that a devotee would be someone who knows that they're not the source of love. They don't have to take the burden anymore.
That's a good one. That's a very good one. In fact, Krishna in the Gita, chapter 7, talks about 4 kinds of people who come. devotional service. And I think this is such a fundamental verse. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur really extends this to 4 levels of motivation in general. Krishna says 4 kinds of people come to me. Right? Anyone remember those? Can recite the Sanskrit if you like. Yes, your name please?
Another devotee.
Devi.
I believe some of them are ones who are like materially like exhausted, ones who like want something, ones who are in distress, ones like seeking fortune.
Okay, good, very good. So Chaturvida Bhajante Mam, Janasu Kritino Arjuna, Artho Jigyasu Artharthi Jnani, Shabharat Vishava. This is Krishna saying 4 kinds of people. Right? So the first kind says distressed. And somebody who comes to God, who returns to God, and in that state of distress. So when you read the Srimad Bhagavatam, you will see that all the 4 are included. And there is a range. Someone who turns to Krishna from any of those 4 places. Because it's very important. In those 4 places, each one of those 4 places, there is a particular experience of care. Okay. Now, many times we talk about care, usually in a distressed place. Because that's where it's more acutely, externally acutely visible, the deficit. But each one of those 4 is actually an experience of Krishna's shelter. And therefore care. So one who approaches Krishna, right, from any one of those 4 places, turns to God for this, from a place of distress and asking God for I need relief. Right? That person, Krishna says, Krishna after this verse, he says, undoubtedly all of them are great souls. So there is a very broad way in which Krishna looks at devotee, and then he also qualifies it. We talk about that. So distress, so that is basic survival. Somebody who turns to God because their survival capacities, or their survival has been compromised in many ways. Okay. Then the second kind of person who turns to God is somebody who wants to thrive, materially speaking, too. Emotionally perhaps sometimes. But there is a sense of like, well, I want something and God can provide it. Right? The third kind, right, curious. And Krishna defines in the Gita as curious. You can take that even deeper. Because real curiosity is ultimately piqued when we understand something is just not right in this place. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur also extends this. The realm of curiosity also comes by experiencing a sense of injustice. How many of us have experienced injustice in our life? The question of fairness really brings so much complexity. Somebody then turning to God because they're trying to figure this out, but understand something is just not. Who's accountable? Who is in charge? Because this doesn't seem to work. It's not logical anymore. I don't understand what's happening here, right? So justice is an important part of care. So we start with survival, thriving, justice, and ultimately the 4th, which is love. Somebody who goes to God because they're actually seeking the highest expression of the soul, which is love. So anyone who turns to Krishna from any one of those 4 categories, broadly defined, Krishna says it devotee. And then, amongst them, Krishna says, one who comes to me from a place of love, I consider that person to be the topmost. So interestingly, in our devotee community, philosophically, we understand that the 4th is the highest. Emotionally, we are probably not there yet. So we may have come to Krishna consciousness because of many different reasons. I can say 100%, if somebody told me when I first walked into a class that you're here because you want love of God, it wouldn't have made any sense to me. I went in because I knew I was suffering very clearly. And I wanted answers. I wanted relief. Which is why I came. And somehow I got cheated to understand, to recognizing, oh my God, this is much bigger than I thought. And then suddenly I find myself in a place where I'm singing, dancing, chanting, and then I'm listening to this class where people tell me that ultimately the nature of the soul is to love God. And so intellectually over time, both from a place of understanding the philosophy, from understanding the philosophy and also from a place of just emotional belonging, I came to and I stayed. But if I have to really honestly look at myself, the emotional needle in terms of what I can expect and understand as care versus what at the highest state of experience of love is, they are different. They are different. So when we talk about devotees and devotee care, it is the extension of Krishna's love to all the four categories. Right? From helping someone to, helping them survive the onslaught of this material world, to help them get a sense of belonging and thriving, to help them perhaps even receive justice, understand justice, and then for them to experience love. All of that exists, but love ultimately includes all the other three. So the reason why, again, we come back to the same point as we started. We cannot care without love. And love includes all the other categories. They will naturally, which is why when someone turns to Krishna, Krishna can actually address everybody in all of those four levels. So devotees specifically, and especially when we come to Krishna consciousness, when we have spent some time in Krishna consciousness, understanding the philosophy, even when we are emotionally not there, intellectually we understand that ultimately what I want to aspire for is to become Krishna's servant unconditionally. And the scriptures, amongst all paraphernalia, all of Krishna's paraphernalia, right? Paraphernalia essentially means that which belongs to Krishna. Right? Bhagavatam essentially means of the Lord, that which belongs to God, what it belongs to Krishna. There is one paraphernalia called Tadiya that is considered to be the highest amongst all of Krishna's paraphernalia. And guess what the Tadiya is? The devotee. The devotee. So amongst all of Krishna's paraphernalia, of all that belongs to Krishna, the devotee is actually considered to be the highest. Which means that when we are interacting with devotees, we are actually interacting with Krishna's most treasured possession. And so how careful we should be with it. And yet how careless can we be? So as I said, I'm also going to share from I see every day how I make mistakes in this, how careless I can be in this, which is also why when we are not careful, so care includes being careful, right? Which is why when we are interacting with devotees, it is such a razor's edge. Because when we are not careful, we will inevitably be careless. And that's the seed of offenses. Which is why when we interact with devotees, we have to bring in we have to be careful. So care implies being careful. And many times we are not paying that kind of attention because we forget. As we seep in more into our own material consciousness, we actually forget that when we are interacting with devotees, just for the reasons that I mentioned, how Krishna looks at the devotee, what is the range that Krishna is looking at. And we actually forget that this is Krishna's most prized property. Which is why the topic of devotee care is so simple and yet so complicated. Because of how we tend to relate to this particular object of Krishna. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read one particular episode. This is so simple. This just gives a flavor to how simple care is. There are numerous examples of this. So hopefully you'll be able to see one thing that is very simple and one topic that is complex. And again, as I said, we are just scratching the surface. So bear with me. We're almost halfway through our time. Hopefully we'll be able to address both of them and give some time for questions because this topic raises a lot of questions. So this particular episode comes in the 19th chapter of the Antya-lila. This is when Mahaprabhu is experiencing the heights of devotional ecstasy and is basically spending all his time in the Gambhira, exhibiting essentially the same signs that Srimati Radharani would exhibit. And so what happens in the process is Mahaprabhu is kept in a very confined place because the chapters leading up to this particular episode show how Mahaprabhu wants, he begins to unconsciously hurt himself in many, many different ways because of, in his experience of ecstasy, he forgets where he is. He jumps into the ocean once and gets swept several miles. Right? And the other time he's found in a cowshed amongst cows. Once he's found in front of the Simradwara temple, in front of Jagannath Puri, in front of the Jagannath temple at the Simradwara gate. And then once he's found scratching his face on the walls, and through that, he's just bleeding everywhere. So what the devotees decide to do is they decide to appoint someone who will always be with Mahaprabhu 24/7. Does anyone know what the name of the devotee is? Surdamodar? No?
No, Govinda.
No? No. Good guesses. Not Govinda, not Surdamodar. This devotee is, his name is Shankar Pandit. He is Damodar Pandit's younger brother. And they choose him to be, so essentially he is the only devotee in the entire Chaitanya Charitamrita who actually gets to be with Mahaprabhu 24/7 in his room, in the Gambhira, sleeping right next to Mahaprabhu. Very, very special. And so Shankar Pandit is there. So this is just a preview of what is happening. So I'm just going to read from this CC. Unable to find the door, I kept hitting the four walls with my face. My face was injured and it bled, but I still could not get out. This is Mahaprabhu saying. In this state of madness, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mind was unsteady. Whatever he did, whatever he said or did, was all symptomatic of madness. Swarup Damodar was very anxious. But then he had an idea. The following day, he and the other devotees considered it together. After consulting with one another, they entreated Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to allow Shankar Pandit to lie down in the same room with him. Thus Shankar Pandit lay at the feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and the Lord placed his legs upon Shankar Pandit's body. Beautiful. Shankar Pandit became celebrated by the name Prabhu Pado Padana, Prabhu Pado Padana, the pillow of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was like Vidura, as Shukdev Goswami previously described him. Just going to read further. Shankar massaged the legs of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But while massaging, he would fall asleep and thus lie down. So think about this, right? This is the beauty of this Chaitanya Charitamrita, very human. So Shankar Pandit is serving Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu 24 hours a day, essentially. And at one point in time at night, is massaging the legs of the Lord. And while massaging, he would fall asleep and thus lie down. He would lie asleep without a covering on his body. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would get up and wrap him with his own quilt. So simple. When you really meditate on this exchange that's happening, there is nothing dramatic, there is no infrastructure, there is no broadcasting, there is nothing. It's just very simple. So just imagine the scene where Mahaprabhu, he sees Shankar Pandit in his room, lying down without a quilt, after having served the Lord, and just falls asleep that way. Mahaprabhu takes the quilt off his own body and puts it on Shankar Pandit. Shankar Pandit would always fall asleep, but he would quickly awaken, sit up, and again begin massaging the legs of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In this way, he would stay awake the entire night. So the reason why I felt this was, when I read this first time itself, it was just very deeply touched my heart, because love is a very simple thing. It's not complicated. We make it, then false ego makes it too complicated. But it's very, very simple. Right? When you see and when you care, then whatever you do for somebody from that place is very simple. It can be just picking up and giving something to a person. It can just be welcoming somebody from your heart by saying a few really heartfelt, kind words. It doesn't take much which is why also Krishna was the connoisseur of love. Patram pushpam phalam toyam yome bhaktya prayachati tadaham bhakti bhaktam krishnami predatma. It's very simple. And this is the exchange. Mahaprabhu finds Shankar Pandit sleeping without a quilt, gets up and puts a quilt on his arm. This care. So I'll just pause here and ask for any thoughts, any questions, or any comments that might have arisen based on whatever we discussed thus far. Yes?
I just want to say that was a great, beautiful example. It's just sincere, simple care. Very simple, you know? That's what it is, you're right. You complicate that so much, but it's just that gesture, simple, sincerely.
Yeah. The thing is, without the heart, this is the thing, we try to substitute the heart with other things, right? Without the heart, everything becomes complicated. The heart is, but with the heart, everything actually becomes simple. And that's what Krishna really wants to relish. So that's why Prabhupada also emphasized, this is also the experience that people have with Srila Prabhupada. there was a certain childlike, simple way of expressing love. Love is not sophisticated in that sense of the term, you know. When we listen to what devotees experienced when they were in Prabhupada's presence, was just very simple affection. So when we overcomplicate this, and the reason why we overcomplicate it, we'll talk about it for a little bit. The reason why we complicate it is we substitute the heart with other things, both on the giving end and on the receiving end. Thank you. Anything else? Yes.
I think, we hear this term people over projects. And this image of this devotee just massaging Lord Chaitanya and like giving their full heart to the point where like that was clearly just their only existence. Their only existence, and then they would fall asleep, but then they would wake up because that love is so overpowering that it transcends any bodily, considerations. And I was just kind of meditating right now on how sometimes we, like you said, we can overcomplicate things by thinking, well, wanting to do big things for Prabhupada and like the mission and accomplishing so much. And then in that striving for that, you can lose that simplicity. But that actually, when you just focus on the simplicity, like Mother Teresa said, we can't do big things, but we can do small things with great love. Then when you focus on that simplicity and that care and taking care of people, everyone is inspired and big things occur.
Yes, it's true. Very, very true. Yeah, so much came to my mind when you were sharing what you were sharing. Anyway, I will hold off before. Any other comments? Yes. So good to see you.
Building up the page of notes of all the beautiful points you raised. And one of them that surprised me and was so beautiful that I wanted to share it again was where you said that the greatest hadiya is the devotee. I was thinking you were going to say Lord Balaram and trying to figure out how it was connected. So I was just thinking about how important it is to remember that in all of our dealings. Remembering to be careful. Remembering to be authentic with the level I am, which often is not love. And then the third thing I wanted to pose as a question is that to me love has always seemed so multifaceted. And that even the interactions between Advaita Acharya and Nityananda are ultimately love. And so that any of us who have had to walk into perhaps a difficult conversation, or have had to express that affection and that care in a way that isn't servitude, that may be more firm. What advice do you have? What realizations do you have? Because I know you probably have many of them.
Well, this is it's such a good leeway to the complexity of devotee care, which I want to talk about, and this will hopefully stir up some conversation around the question that you so thoughtfully posed. And this comes from, again, the Chaitanya Charitamrita, where this is in Madhya Lila, I think it's chapter 10. In the interest of time, I'm not going to read. I always love reading from the text, which is such a Kaviraj Goswami writes so beautifully, so in details, right? Like he would always fall asleep. Kaviraj Goswami there is no idealizing in some ways. It's like, oh, this servant served with full attention 24/7, didn't fall asleep even one achievement. That's the beauty of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. That's so heart-rendering in that sense of the term. And this episode comes in the Mahaprabhu's tour to South India, where he travels with a servant called Kalakrishnadas. And Kalakrishnadas, at one point in time, falls prey to his senses and leaves Mahaprabhu. I'm not going into the details of what happens. And then Mahaprabhu rescues him. And he brings him back to Puri with him. When he arrives in Puri, he says, take this person out of my presence. I don't want to see him anymore. And it's pretty hard. And Krishnadas is just like heartbroken. He's very regretful, very remorseful, and then also recognizing that he will no longer, Mahaprabhu doesn't want him in his presence anymore. And so what is important here, and we'll talk about the second part of it, what is important here is that justice, we talked about the third reason why people approach God. And it's interesting how Krishna, when Krishna says Chatur Varnyam Maya Srishtam Guna Karma Vivavishaya, he talks about the Varnashram system. Justice is actually the foundational, one of the foundational bases of a healthy social structure. There has to be accountability. And if without that, accountability is a big element of care. Yes?
It's a little bit of a complicated question, so bear with me.
Yeah.
I think you'll remember when I first met you, you were still a financial analyst.
Yes.
And when I heard that you were giving a talk on devotee care, I thought that the talk was going to be about how devotees cared for financially. Because I recently met a devotee who was about 70 years old and has worked his whole life as a devotee and devoted all of his energy. And he told me that he wanted to know, in a very naive way, if his $5,000 that he had saved over his lifetime would be enough for his future retirement.
Yeah.
And I realized that he's in distress.
Yes.
And I don't know if there's any mechanism or any thought to caring for people like that.
You know, this is which is why this topic is the practical, tactical elements. I deliberately stayed away from the tactics for the reasons that I wanted to focus on the principle of care. But I do think that it's important, it's very, very important that we care for financial well-being of, again, when we talked about the 4 kinds of people that come to Krishna. Thriving is a big part of it. There is care that's experienced when we help someone thrive. Money is a big part of thriving, both survival and thriving. Money is necessary, finance is necessary. So it's important to tactically understand how we can help someone with that. And what I want to also emphasize is that those tactics alone will not be sufficient. When those tactics are built, they have to actually come from a place of a bigger map, a broader experience of love that needs to be conveyed. Because many times the tactics will not be enough. Because we are all limited. And we'll also begin to see that from an infrastructure, from a resources standpoint, we will hit limitations. We can only do so much. But when there is a level of care that's experienced, what's powerful about care is that even when I'm limited, I can always show care with my limitations, meaning I can always call someone and say, see, I wish I could do more for you, but whatever I can do, I'm still going to be here. It goes a very, very long way. Okay. So it is a complicated question, and we can discuss the details of how that can be done. It's a much broader topic, but I think it's important, very important. Now coming back to what you said about the accountability, I think accountability is a very, very big part of, yes. Yes, Bhagavata.
Oh, no, yeah, I was listening to you speak about accountability.
Yes.
I'm more was speaking about just the many facets of love and expression of care.
Who was that? I couldn't hear the second part.
Oh, sure, I was just talking about the many facets of love and the various expressions of care, not so much
Oh, no,
accountability.
accountability.
I'm listening, I'm learning from you, so I'm happy to
Hare Krishna. No, the reason why, because you use the word firm, and firm, meaning like I don't know if you use this word. Sometimes you have to be firm, right? And you said that I've been in those situations, perhaps, in which I definitely have. And so I was trying to highlight that many times firmness comes from a place of having to hold someone accountable. And that is actually an expression of love. Because when we can't do that, when we don't do that in time, the kind of suffering that it will create for that person and for everybody else is huge. And then there is a very fine line where even when we are talking to somebody firmly, we are many times talking from a place of where we are personally irritated by this person's behavior. But have to somehow justify that I love this person. And so what has to happen is before we have to enter into those kinds of conversations, we have to work hard to find even this drop of, and sometimes we will actually see, I can't find it. I can't find any love for this person. And then we have to pray, we have to really pray to Krishna before we can enter into it. Again, be careful. Because sometimes we can, under the name of justice, be vengeful. Very fine line. And this is where it becomes a razor's edge. So we have to be able to find that love before we can. That's why when we are in a position where we have to hold other people accountable or manage, we have to have our security strings very, very tightly tied to people who can really help us become aware of those blind spots that we may have. Being in a position of leadership without the circle of security where I can actually be very honestly, which is why traditionally the Kshatriyas who were in that position always have the Brahmins around. Because when you're in a position of holding somebody accountable and meeting justice, that's where, because justice and justification go, there is a very, very close tie. They go hand in hand, and we can very quickly justify something that may not necessarily be justice. So it requires subtle, very, very subtle and deep conversations to really find, well, where is can I find love in my heart first? Right? And it's complicated. It's very complex.
It's so beautiful. From my, just pratyaksha subjective bias experience, it's only from that place that, and detachment, that any change
That's right.
or any hope
That's right.
can be inspiring.
Absolutely.
In any communication,
That's right.
finding that soft start from
Yes.
a genuine place of care.
That's
It's
right.
so beautifully stated.
And which is why what happens when Mahaprabhu deals with Kala Krishna Das in this way, there will be other episodes too. It's painful for the person who's on the receiving end. But they never doubt the love. Prabhupada had exactly the same quality. Even when justice is meted out, the other person doesn't go away feeling rejected from the love. It's hard, there is no doubt. And yet there is the basic fundamental foundation of the relationship is still intact. That cannot be faked. This is the other thing. You cannot artificially do it. You cannot. Which is why when we are in the position of that kind of care, whether it's from the smallest, the most microcosm of that is when you're raising kids, and I can say from my own limited experience, you have to be firm. There's a place for it. And I also see when it's coming from a place of personal irritation, it never works. And that's when you also run the risk of actually damaging the relationship. And yet, it's not to say that I don't, I fall prey to it many times. And what I only understand is I'm just a limited human being. It just creates this thing that you have to look at your own self and say, wow, I'm still not there. Still not there. And it takes repeated apologies, at least internally. So we cannot substitute love for anything. In care, the foundation of care is, the work here is to be able to develop that eternal love within our hearts. From that place, then all different flavors of care can be expressed. Survival, thriving, justice, I guess, in love. All of those different flavors can be met with tactically, but the core ingredient, the essential ingredient in it is love, which means we have to work towards it. It's not a simple thing, it's not an easy thing. And yet, I don't think we can substitute, we can substitute the major with the minor. It just doesn't work. So that's, in short, devotee care, understanding what care is, the basic ingredient of care is love. It's simple. And why devotee care is so important, because devotee is Krishna's most prized property. Because of why they come to Krishna. And then understanding that the only way we will be able to do it is if we are regularly, even in our practicing state of devotion life, even if we haven't gotten to that place where we experience love 100%, that we are consciously really striving to do it. Because in the striving is love. And that's the first way love expresses itself. It's like there is a sincere striving towards it. That can be 2 minutes. Any other final thoughts before we conclude? Yes.
I did just
Yes.
Well, I wanted to thank you mainly because I don't know, me and another devote, well, Dina Bandhu was a champion. We've been just trying to struggle to find like a definition of spiritual care, especially from our Bhakti tradition. And you really, you provided so much incredible, like just really thoughtful, just bring it back to love as really a definitive or identifying aspect of the care. Because when you ask because when you think of devotee care, it either means care for devotees or the type of care that devotees give, right? It's going to be one of those. So as far as that's the latter, the type of care that devotees give would be based in this concept of bhakti, of love. And that's very distinct from what we might have to offer in terms of care. At least I know everybody universally has care. But as far as like developing an idea or concept, what makes that care special, that devotee care, is that the foundation is love. And not just, there is the universal love, but there's this transcendent, this very like essential core aspect of love that really defines our existence. So I thank you because I've been racking my brain for weeks about how we define that or what we're going to work on. But you really brought some clarity and brought a lot of things to the table. I thank you.
Some appreciate you speak, isn't it? It's just so true. Thank you. Hare Krishna, thank you all. Thank you for being here. Please let this be an inspiration for all of us to really go deeper in our own bhakti. I love that love. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Now please stay, we're going to have arti now. We can just move the red cushions to the side and the chairs to the side. Then everyone can come forward and we can sing and dance while Rasanath leads us in arti for the Lord. And please stay. Hare Krishna.
Hare Hare Jai Om Vishnu Bhag Paramhamsa Parivrajakacharya Shloka Sat Shri Srimad Abhay Charanar Vinda Bhakti Vedanta Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Om Vishnu Bhag Paramhamsa Parivrajakacharya Shloka Sat Shri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Ramacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivas Adi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Rajabhumi Vrindavan Dham Ki Mayapur Navadvip Dham Ki Purushottam Kshetra Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Ganga Mai Ki Yamuna Mai Ki Bhakti Devi Ki Tulasi Devi Ki Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Shri Shri Radha Murlidhar Ki Shri Gaura Chandra Ki Shnitai Gaura Premanande All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glories, all glories to Sri Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Namaste Narasimhaya.
Narasimha. Bhagwan ki
Jai.
Jai Shri Shri Radha ki
Jai.
Shri Gaura Chanda ki
Jai.
Shri Deva Bhagwan ki
Jai.
Shri Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Guru Premanande
Hari
Hari
Bol.
Bol.
Krishna devotees, thank you so much for being here at Bhagavata, our weekly program for devotees. Can everybody just give a huge 3 heart bowls for Rasanath Prabhu? If you would like him to come back more and more and give more and more Bhagavata, please give one Haribol. Jai. Clarity was telling me, like, the temple room is so full, and like, I was like, it's Rasanath Prabhu. It's Rasanath Prabhu. Everybody wanted to hear from Rasanath Prabhu. So, we have some announcements before we break for lunch prasadam in the back of the temple. Please stay for that, and also give a donation if you can at our prasadam table. There's ways to scan and also to give cash. Because this is a free program for our community. Next week we have Vasudeva Prabhu speaking, which is so exciting. He's going to be speaking on faith versus belief, building a foundation for our spiritual life. And he has a lot of realization. And some announcements. We have a self-care one-day retreat with Mahatma Prabhu coming up. We're very excited about Mahatma Prabhu is an initiating spiritual master, guru in ISKCON, and one of the most incredible devotees I've ever met. And he's going to be giving a one-day retreat on Saturday, August 26th. We all agree that caring for devotees with love and compassion is important. Haha, that's what our class was about today. But we all don't understand or acknowledge that doing this for ourselves is even more essential so that we can be able to give to others. So that's what this is going to be about. Please, it's free, but of course you can always give a donation, which is encouraged, and registration is required. So please do register as soon as possible for this amazing Don't Wanna Miss retreat. Speaking of one-day retreats, we also have a Chakra Energy Harmony through Bhakti Yoga one-day retreat with Rukmini Walker, who is a board member here at Bhakti Center and a very, very senior Srila Prabhupada disciple. And she will lead us through how balancing the chakras can help our practice of devotional service. Same spiel, free, but donations can help us run the events and pay for travel expenses of the presenters and prasadam and all that good stuff. And it is required to register, so please register online through that. And then we have a bunch of our yearly festivals coming up. Julan Yatra, August 27th to August 30th. Balaram Jayanti, August 30th, Janmashtami, September 6th, and we have a community japa all-day japa program on August 5th from 10 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. Come and go as you please, or you can just stay the whole day and chant so many rounds, and it'll be so nice. And then we also, Doyle Baruga is going to be leading a Bhakti Shastri course, which is a systematic study of essential Bhakti Yoga wisdom books. It's going to be Nectar of Instruction, Ishopanishad, Bhagavad Gita, and Nectar of Devotion. So if you are interested in deepening your scriptural knowledge and having realizations how to apply it to your life, because Doyle is always super practical, please register for that. That's all I have. If you want to get this amazing newsletter that I'm reading from, oh no, Cool Pradeep is looking at me. We always have open office hours by Cool Pradeep and Dina Bandhu every Sunday from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Yeah, for spiritual care.
Spiritual care. And if you are going through something in your life or know someone who's going through something in their life, come see them on the second floor in 2E. They're here, they love you, their whole life is to care for you. Please go talk to them. And yes, if you'd like to sign up for the newsletter, go to bhakticenter.org, scroll down to the bottom of the page, and click on Join Our Temple Newsletter. And you can get this amazing weekly email that I'm reading from. If you would like to get daily updates, which is the same thing as the newsletter, but just like daily versus like all at the same time, you can ask me to add you to the temple WhatsApp, and I'm happy to do that. Have an amazing rest of your day. Please stay, talk to each other, care for each other, and share prashadam. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.